Good evening, everyone. On behalf of India Foundation, I welcome you all for a book discussion on Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakravarty's book, Transformation, Evolution of Bangladesh and uh, Emergence of Bangladesh and Evolution of India-Bangladesh Ties. To discuss this book, we have a set of eminent panelists whom I would like to request to come to the stage. So, may I request the author, Ambassador Chakravarty. May I request Lieutenant General Sayyid Asnan sir. May I request Ambassador Veena Sikri ji. And may I also request Rami Desai ji, Distinguished Fellow India Foundation. Our other panelist is on his way. And before we start this program, may I request all to kindly switch off your phone or keep the phones in silent mode so that the program can function, program can go smoothly. Now, may I request Rami Desai ji, Distinguished Fellow India Foundation, to kindly carry forward the proceedings. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Pavan, so much. It is always such a pleasure to have and host these events, especially the book discussions. We always manage to get together and have such an expert panel. Thank you, ma'am, for facilitating this. This book discussion, I think, is really a privilege and an honor for me to moderate because we have such a great panel of experts on Bangladesh. So I welcome all of you. Today's discussion is on Ambassador Chakravarty's very, very important book, Transformation, Emergence of Bangladesh and Evolution of India-Bangladesh Ties. I think it's come at such an appropriate moment because everybody's talking about Bangladesh. We understand the impact of Bangladesh and its internal dynamics right now, especially from the lens of India's security, also with what is happening in Myanmar, the chaos that ensues there. I think this really has become the most volatile border of Asia. So without much ado, I would like to ask Ambassador Chakravarty to please give us a brief about your book. I know this book traces the last half of the century and obviously was written before the 5th of August. So it does not include the recent developments, but I'm sure that Ambassador Chakravarty will have really deep insights because you know this country so well on what really led to the recent developments. So may I ask you to give us a brief about your book as well as about the current situation, sir? You can speak from here or you can take the podium.
Well, thank you very much, India Foundation and Habitat. I can see my dear colleague, Ambassador Mukherjee, who's the president of this very famous institution, sitting right here. I have thanked her in my book also for giving me certain guidance and inspiration. Now, but the real, force behind this book is also sitting here next to Ambassador Mukherjee, my wife, because without her constant, I won't say nagging, but encouragement, I wouldn't have written this book, frankly. And because I was writing after, after retirement, a lot of articles of various issues in newspapers and things like that. When she one day turned around and said, why are you wasting time writing articles? Why don't you write a book? Sorry, your wife too also did the same thing, okay. So I said, no, I can't write a book. I have written notes, I have written briefs when I was in service, but I really can't write a book. But she was very persistent and said, one day she said, no lunch for you unless you start something. So I said, okay, let me write a para. So I wrote a para after much sort of, thing. Then she, of course, she herself is an author of 22 books. So I had in-house expertise telling me how to organize things, etc. The technical side of it, not the substance. So that's how this book came about. And my own sort of interest in Bangladesh actually began in childhood because my family is from a place like Ambassador Mukherjee's, which used to be called Bikrampur, which is like the Dhaka district, So, and my father was born there, went to school in Tangail, finished his matriculation from there, And he used to tell me a lot of stories, and so did the elders in the family whenever we were in Kolkata. And I still remember my grandmother speaking in that accent, and I used to laugh at her because that was not the Bengali I had learnt at home, but it was the dialect of that. But then it was very nice talking to her and other elders. So that's how my interest grew as to. So I used to ask very, childish questions of my father. Why did we come here? What happened, etc. So he used to give me a lot of history as to what happened, etc. So that's how my interest grew. Little did I realize that one day I would join the Foreign Service, and I'm actually an astrophysicist by my degree in the university, and diplomacy is so far removed from that universe that so people used to laugh at me. What are you doing here? So anyway, that's another story. So that's how, and I want to also narrate a small little anecdote before I get down to the book, is that my first posting was in Cairo, where I was learning Arabic. And the most, and I can see Ambassador Vivek Kaju smiling at me because he was there before me. He also learned Arabic. Sorry? And you were there later, but you didn't study Arabic. So that is the difference. Anyway, so Ambassador KPS Menon, if you remember, who very venerable, one of our seniors, was our ambassador, and he had come from Dhaka to Cairo. And one day we were talking. I said, "Look, this is my interest. I would." So he promptly said, "Your next posting, I'll request them to send you to Dhaka," which of course didn't happen because the ministry didn't work like that. They said, "We've just taught him Arabic, and you want to send him to Dhaka? That's not on." Anyway, that's how it happened, and finally I made it to Dhaka after my posting in, I think, was it, no, before, as Deputy High Commissioner, which was it after Israel, maybe, after I had done a posting in Israel. So I went to Dhaka for the first time. And then, of course, started the discovery, my own discovery, etc. started, went to our village and things like that. But then I got interested in the politics, etc. since those days. Then I went back as the High Commissioner when there was again an upheaval that you are seeing today. This was 2007 when the army moved in to form a caretaker government, and I was actually dealing with the army and the caretaker government in bilateral and other ties. So anyway, that's the background to which I wanted to say that which motivated me to write this book. So, but I wanted to write this book not just bilateral ties. I wanted to focus a bit on history also. Where does Bengal come from? Very few people actually realize that Bengal produced three major empires. Of course, the biggest of them was the Buddhist empire, the Pala dynasty. And before that, the famous Shashank. The name must be familiar to you. Shashank was the man who actually unified Bengal to some extent, and later done by the Pala dynasty. And then came the Sen dynasty, which was again a very Hindu dynasty. It was kind of a resurgent Hindu dynasty. Not much is known about them because it is not taught in our history books, because Bengal was peripheral to the history of India in that sense, which was centered around the northern sort of belt. The other important factor that Bengal, that you must note, apart from the history which is there, you can read it, is that Bengal is the only province far away from Delhi which became majority Muslim. Now, this has always challenged historians as to why it happened. And of course, there are lots of books on it, and one of the finest is by Richard Eaton, professor in Harvard University, which, if you can get hold of it, will give you a great insight into why this happened. This is called Islam and the Bengal Frontier. Now, this is how I got interested, and I have written this book covering, in the beginning, of course, the whole thing is a little bit of a history, geography, etc., where Bengal comes from, and some of these dynasties that I've mentioned. Then I basically get into a partition. And there's a little bit about Mujib's background here, Mujibur Rahman's background during his days studying in Kolkata, where he was actually the right-hand man of Suravardi, who was the Muslim League leader, and who, in his own unfinished memoirs, has written about his, about his sort of anxiety about the partition and the fact that he was a supporter of the Pakistan movement, etc., etc. So it shows you how that person changed over the years when he became the leader of the freedom movement in Bangladesh. Today, of course, they are trying to erase his memory, this new government. I will talk about them later. So that is how I have developed this book. And after that, I come more or less to some of the issues like the Chakma rebellion. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of it, but most of our military friends would know the Chakma rebellion, it was a very important chapter, and it has not died down completely. It sort of comes out little bits and pieces. Now, why did they rebel? You know, the Chittagong Hill Tracts was basically a tribal Buddhist area, about 18 tribes there. Very few Muslims were there. Now, you might ask, why the hell that fellow Radcliffe, who drew this line, gave Chittagong Hill Tracts to Pakistan? It was a completely non-Muslim area. Now, there is a reason for it. I have discussed a little bit of it. It was because he thought that he was doing a fair exchange, like giving Murshidabad to India, which was a Muslim majority district, like Gurdaspur, a Muslim majority district, came to India. So he was doing a bit of give and take there. Moreover, I think the strategic reason was that the Karnafuli River, on which there is this famous dam which was built during Pakistan times, its origins are in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. So he thought he'll give this to Pakistan. You will be surprised to know that on the 15th of August, the Chakmas and the other Buddhists of that area had raised the Indian flag. They thought that we are going to be part of India. Of course, that cost them a lot, in the sense that they faced a lot of retribution from the Bangladeshi authorities, on the Pakistani authorities. And then the whole thing started of, Muslim settlement in these areas, to an extent that one Bangladeshi general went on record to say, we need the land and not the people. Now, this was the attitude of some of the people in East Pakistan, which to some extent carried over to when Bangladesh became independent. So that is another chapter which is worth reading, I think, so that you know the background to all this. Then I've done a chapter on the economic issues, etc., which is really to bring out the fact that Bangladesh, which was born and was derided by Henry Kissinger as that international basket case, actually overtook Pakistan in all the parameters, economic parameters. I've put in a chart there which you can see. Bangladesh's exports are more, its GDP is higher. I mean, Pakistan is a bigger state. But then Bangladesh slowly took over. And, their economic success story is worth a read, actually. And finally, I think I would talk a little bit about one other chapter, which is, I've called it the vexed issues. What bothers, or what are the irritants between the two countries that we need to sort out over a period of time? And then I have the concluding chapter, which I have, in my view, I think what is the roadmap ahead, etc. But all this has now been subverted by what happened, in Bangladesh recently. There's a new government. By the way, Professor Yunus, who I met frequently during 2007, he, after the 2006 Nobel Prize, developed political ambitions. And it was clear that in 2007 he was being promoted, and by his American friends mainly, and the army also fell in line. What was then called the -2 formula, which might soon happen again, by the way, because I think Hasina is out, and Khaleda Zia is being sent abroad for treatment. So the -2 formula actually may be implemented very soon by this new government. Now, Professor Yunus floated a political party, and tried to fight election, but failed miserably, because by then, I was there at that time, and finally I had to deal with it, and finally the army-backed caretaker government went in for a proper election, and Hasina came back to power in 2009. And in 2024, she was evicted from power. So you can see how long a stretch. Of course, there are so many allegations about her rigging elections. But rigging elections is not a new thing in Bangladesh. It has been rigged earlier also, and she was blamed for rigging. Boycott of elections took place and things like that. That is why today you see, and then Yunus was submerged with a variety of legal cases, including income tax fraud, money laundering, and many other things, because as his ambition grew, his Grameen Bank joined hands with Telenor, that mobile company, I think Norwegian, and started a Grameen telephone service, which was like a mobile service. And there were so many allegations that and Hasina took advantage. Every politician would, there were cases. He owed 666 crores taka as income tax arrears, which he has promptly, waived after coming to power, and he has waived and withdrawn all the cases that were against him. Fair enough, he is now in power, he can do that. So Professor Yunus harbors a great deal of bitterness against Hasina and obviously her party, the Awami League. Awami Leagues, of course, I wouldn't say they are any saints. They did also bad things, and that is what slowly over the last 15 years, the ferment was there and it was growing. And one of the things was that she had become too authoritarian. She was curbing dissent with a very heavy hand. Anyway, those were the allegations. And finally, the student agitation, which was basically a anti-quota, what we call reservation in India, anti-quota government jobs thing, which the Supreme Court, in any case, annulled and said quotas can only be up to 7% and not more. Despite that, the student agitation continued, and you may want to know why. The reason is that it had, by that time, about 200 students had been killed by the police and the army and things like that. And there lies the story of foreign and domestic, political forces who wanted to see Hasina out for a variety of reasons, geopolitical as well as domestic. They got into the act, and the students and the others, particularly the Islamist, stormtroopers like, the Shibir, what is called the youth wing of the Jamaat-e-Islami, which fought against the independence of Bangladesh in 1971, and obviously is very pro-Pakistani and has good relations, by the way, with the Americans. This always surprised us, many of us, that why is it that the Americans were in bed with the Jamaat-e-Islami? Now, there are many reasons for it. I would only say that they were useful to them. That's the basic reason. And they were proved very useful again, this time when the agitation, they took over the agitation, and they poured into the streets, and they are trained in violence, by the way, the youth wing, etc. They do get training in their madrasas and things like that. Of course, I'm not talking about the ideological training and the other things that the religious training that they get. So that is how it happened, and Professor Yunus is a nominee of both the student leaders as well as the Americans, because the Americans also had a hand in encouraging this. There were reports of the student leaders being taken abroad and given advice on how to do social media. There are lots of things. It's all there in the media, not in the book, unfortunately, because it happened all after that. So that is the story, and today we have a government which is, of course, fairly hostile towards India, although I didn't expect Professor Yunus to do that. But he is perhaps not in full control, in my view, and is being guided by various forces, particularly the Islamists and the students, some of whom have deep connections with the Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is a banned organization. The one guy who's now was his advisor and now an advisor in the government, like a cabinet minister, in fact tweeted saying that Bangladesh should take over the northeastern of India and half of West Bengal, because that is our right. He deleted the tweet in something like, he produced a map also. So anyway, these kind of irrational, emotional things have happened. He deleted the tweet, but India government had to protest because he was in the government and he was saying all this. So basically, we are dealing with a hostile government, which is basically which is full of Islamists. There is actually a member of the Hifazatul Islam, one of the rabid Islamic organizations which runs madrasas and all in the government, and he is in charge of minority affairs. I mean, if you want to laugh, that is the one thing that you can laugh at. So this is the situation there. Economically, things are not going too well. Now, I'll say a little bit about, am I exceeding that? Oh, couple of minutes. I would say a few words about how India has reacted. I think India has obviously reacted with restraint and saying, let us see how this all pans out. After all, the interim government by its very nomenclature cannot be there forever, and they have to have elections, which Professor Yunus, under a lot of pressure now, has. I even hear that the two main contenders, the two main political parties who fight against each other all the time, actually are now meeting and discussing the future elections, because they are, the BNP, the Khaleda Zia's party, is also terribly angry with Yunus because he's postponing elections, and they feel this is their golden opportunity to come back to power after 15 or 16 years, where they have been left out in the cold, and obviously their treasury is empty, because only in government that you can make that kind of create that kind of funding to fight elections and keep your party together. So India has acted with restraint. If you have noticed, India has virtually done nothing basically to curtail the visa, that too under pressure, because they attacked the visa office, they attacked and burned down our Indian Cultural Center, for which not a word of apology has come from the Yunus government. Prime Minister has spoken to him, and I think our Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, has talked to their sort of foreign advisor who, by the way, was Foreign Secretary when I was High Commissioner, and I can tell you more stories about that, but I don't have the time. So India has done the right thing in I think in playing it cool, as we say. Let's see what they are up to. They have taken various anti-Indian positions. I think recently they cancelled the training program of 50 judicial officers, which was paid for by India, but they've cancelled it, thinking that. So they are taking some measures which clearly, reflect their attitude towards India. They've also cancelled one or two. All the trains have been stopped. The buses have been stopped. All the cross-border, these kind of connectivity. I think all the projects are also on hold, various projects that India has been doing. So this is the situation, and they don't know really how to go ahead. Yet they are keep asking us for, please send us rice, please send us potatoes, please send us onions, basic essentials, because without that, prices will soar to an extent that they will probably have a civil war again, because the very price sensitive, the people in that country, because largely, working class, and so they will revolt. They'll come on the streets again, saying that we can't live. Some of it is already happening, by the way, if you look at YouTube videos and others. So that is the current situation, but we are saying, okay, let's see how it works. We haven't stopped anything, and many of these essential, because I think we have nothing against the people of Bangladesh, and I think this is a people-friendly sort of an approach, which I think is the right one, because we have been blamed that we didn't think about the people when this agitation took place. Perhaps we were caught off guard. I mean, the comfort level with the Hasina government was perhaps very high, and we thought that she will be able to manage, and we were doing well. Under Hasina, the Bangladesh's economy really got off to a very fine start, and ended up becoming bigger than that of Pakistan, which is something surprising. And the ADB also commended the Bangladesh government as one of the fastest growing economies. Anyway, all that is now history. COVID, Ukraine war had a huge impact on Bangladesh's imports, and prices went up. So they have suffered in terms of their economy. GDP is down, forex reserves are down. So that is the situation at the moment. They are barely managing, I think, because there's a lot of infighting within the interim government. There are different there are different forces at work there, and there are different foreign forces at work. There are different. Pakistan has become very active. The Yunus government has reached out to Pakistan as if it is a long lost brother who they lost, and various various restrictions that were there on Pakistan has been sort of removed, including visas and security clearances, and even now educational exchanges and cultural exchanges have been encouraged. So for Pakistan, it's a golden opportunity to get back into Bangladesh, which they have been denied because they were very active with the BNP Jamaat government from 2000 till 2006, when they were trying to funnel arms into India to the insurgents and others, and they were caught in the process. And so that is the story as far as today is concerned, and I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Chakravarty, for such a lucid account, taking us from the last few decades to what the situation is today. I'm sure a lot of you know that, this is not just about internal security, but over 18 to 20 terrorists have been caught in Assam from Ansarullah Bangla team, an Al-Qaeda affiliate, and a terror plot has also been foiled. So the impact of these changes, I believe, on the Northeast and the rest of the country are going to be immense. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more on this. But moving on to now our panelists, may I please request Mr. Jayanta Roy Chaudhary. You've been a seasoned journalist. Yes, I know. He's been a seasoned journalist. He has a deep insight on Bangladesh. We've had you in our roundtable discussion before. You are presently the editor of the Secretariat. So may I please ask you to give your views on this topic, and you may take about 10 minutes. Thank you.
First of all, let me begin by saying that Pinak's book is an excellent read if you really want to understand Bangladesh, the history, politics, and what is happening. If you want to understand that, it's an excellent book. Pinak, please take a bow on that. And many of the things that are happening now, he hasn't forecast that in the book, but he has thrown a lot of light on it. I'll go to start with press freedom, what's happening there, because there's a lot of talk of how the press was actually muzzled during Hasina's days, and it's supposed to have been freed, according to their newspapers, Daily Star, Prothom Alo, Dhaka Tribune, etc. But actually the reverse has happened. About 150 journalists have been arrested on charges which range from murder. I mean, I can't imagine a journalist murdering someone. And of a murder case in, let's say in Rajshahi, and this journalist has all his life been in Dhaka. So it's like someone being killed in Bareilly and a journalist in Delhi being accused of murdering that person. 150 is a small number. There are about 200 journalists whose accreditation has been cancelled altogether. Many journalists have been forced out of jobs. About 200 more have been forced out of jobs. About half of from the minority community. The rest are supposedly Awami League sympathizers, even if they are not actually sympathetic towards any particular party. Many journalists have had their bank accounts seized. Others are under investigation. Their bank account details are being studied. And these include journalists who probably have not more than a couple of thousand rupees in their bank account. So it's a very funny situation, but press freedom is certainly not there. Prothom Alo and Daily Star, despite being pro-Yunus, extremely pro-Yunus, if to start with. In fact, Prothom Alo's, their editor was in fact, was under fire from the Hasina government earlier for having been pro-Yunus. Their offices have been raided by Jamaat activists for not writing what they would like to see in the newsprint. So this is the state of press freedom as far as Bangladesh is concerned. Revenge politics is on. Awami Leaguers all over the country have been attacked, arrested, again on a number of charges which are very, very difficult and impossible to prove. People are being kept in jail without a shred of evidence being produced before any court of law. It is, if our FEMA or the Defense of India Act, if you remember the DIA, if they were considered to be draconian, whatever is happening in Bangladesh is far more draconian. The flow of refugees, though we have shut our borders, has been there. There are several lakh refugees from the conflict in Bangladesh in West Bengal and in other states, mostly in West Bengal. They are under the radar, so nobody really knows about it, but they are there. I was in Calcutta recently, and I know I have met some of them. They are there. Those poor guys have no other place to go to. And this number will go up if this government continues to be in power. Flow of terror, which Pinak spoke about, which Ms. Rami Desai also pointed out, is going to happen. We already have cases of modules being caught in Malda, Murshidabad area of West Bengal and in Assam. Assam is a preferred route, mainly because the Assam border is easier to cross than the Bengal border. The BSF and the local police in West Bengal, despite whatever differences they might have, are actually quite effective. And they have managed to stop most of it, excepting a little stretch in North Bengal where it's very riverine terrain and it's extremely difficult to police. But the Assam border is a different situation. It's easier because there are a lot of char lands which are again very difficult to really guard. And the fencing doesn't really work there. The rains in the northeast are much more torrential than anywhere else in India, and fences break down. So these people are coming and they'll keep coming. Both the refugees will come as well as the terror modules that we hope will not come. They will come. There is no way out for it. We'll have to be on our guard for that. The other interesting thing is that, of course, Pinak spoke about the various threats that various people have been giving us, including capturing Calcutta in 4 days straight, which was, I think, very funny. And that led to a lot of memes. Luckily for us, our people haven't really reacted very sharply to whatever is happening there. There have been more jokes about it in India's social media or even from Indian politicians on whatever is being said and done there. But the latest, which I think Dr. Yunus spoke about, was he asked his army to be on the guard, to be vigilant, etc., to be ready for a conflict. But the conflict which is really maybe brewing is on their southeastern border. There is a new state. The Arakans have virtually, though they have not declared independence, they have created a state for themselves. Most of, if not 90 to 95% of what constitutes the Rakhine province has become independent. It's under the Arakan army right now. They have also taken over Paletwa, which is in the Chin areas, which means they are on our borders in Mizoram. The other groups, CNF, PDF, etc., have taken over most of the border posts that the Myanmar army used to have in Mizoram, Manipur, and Nagaland border. So we have a situation where we are not facing the Myanmar army anywhere. Not that we were facing them in that sense, but they were guarding the borders. So that's no longer there. It's these rebel groups which are really in control of the entire stretch, which is the Indian border. And the Arakan army is the most organized. Perhaps their administration is also far better than the others, the Chins and the Sangay hill tracts. So they are the ones we have to really contend with. I think Indians have been in touch with them. They had come, I think, also to Delhi some time back. But the problem is that they consider the Rohingyas to be some kind of enemies. There is reason for it. The Rohingya groups have been fighting on behalf of the Myanmarese army. And there have been a lot of videos of preachers speaking in Cox's Bazar and Ramu camps, Rohingya camps, asking for volunteers to fight against the Arakanis. And the Arakanis are aware of that. And it would not be very surprising if there are points of conflict on the border. Though there is a river flowing between them and the Bangladeshis, but that river is not really a barrier. That should be their real worry, actually, not the Indian army. I don't think the Indian army has any plans at all to ever cross the border, but they should be, Dr. Yunus and his people should be really worried about the Arakanis. They are a volatile army and it's a battle-hardened army. It has been fighting for quite a long time. The latest battle was, I think, started in October, November 23, and they have, in these last 13 months, they have really done a fantastic job. But that said, let's get back to Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a situation which is a problem for us, and it will continue to be a problem for us until and unless we are able to either woo them over or there is a change of government. Dr. Yunus is promising an election, but that election he will keep delaying because he would obviously like to create a king's party, maybe with Jamatis at the core of it. And with others. BNP is not happy about that, which is why, as Pinak was pointing out, the BNP and the Awami are coming together, though they have been giving lollipops to the BNP in the form of lifting the cases against Tariq Rahman, Begum Zia's son, who is their real leader living in London, though they haven't allowed him to come back home. If he comes back home, they will be in trouble. For India, we have to, obviously Awami League will remain a friend of India, though Sheikh Hasina is right now not a figure which she has support in the country. Let us not rule that out. But she's a contentious personality right now. So probably Awami League will have to discover new leadership from within their ranks, maybe those who were in student politics in the 1980s, early 1990s, who are in their 50s right now. They will be younger, they will be perhaps more sharper, and those who are not touched by corruption cases which have been filed against many of these Awami League leaders. Awami League cannot be written off. At any given point of time, if there is a free and fair election, they should be able to get about a third of the vote. Traditionally, that has been the way. Awami League has got about a third of the vote. Third of the vote goes to BNP. The rest of the vote shifts from one side to the other. The shift really results in a change of government. That has been the traditional way, excepting perhaps in the last two elections, where BNP did not even fight the election, so we really don't know what could have happened. Jamatis have never been a popular force. They are an ideology which will not die down. They are an ideology which has started in the 1930s with the rise of Muslim League in Bangladesh. As Pinak Das book also, kind of traces that history. And they have remained an ideology even after 71 when the Mukti Jodhas and the Indian Army won the battle. That ideology did not die down, and the people who believed in that ideology remains. And they have come back with a vengeance this time round, whichever way around. Unfortunately for us, the last American administration, which is now on its way out, believed that the Jamatis are moderate Islamists. In fact, I still remember a US ambassador to Bangladesh who told me this, and I was amazed that he actually believed. I can see the smile on General Hasnain's face on that, but he actually believed it, and he kept saying they are moderates. I mean, well, they have shown how moderate they are. They have student gangs who actually have cut the veins of their opponents on the street with weapons, sharp weapons, in street gang fights. So that is the problem. But there are even more radical groups which have come to power along with them, and they are the bigger problem. Jamatis you can still talk to and maybe do some kind of business with, but you cannot do business, though they are anti-Indian and they will remain anti-Indian. Their politics is about being anti-Indian, anti-Hindu. But the rest of them, you just can't do any business with because they are not going to listen to you. They are unwilling to listen to reason. And they are a threat not just to India. They are a threat to all countries, including and especially Western countries. The United States of America should remember that there was an attack by Islamist groups from Bangladesh on the US Consulate General in Calcutta. That is part of our history, part of what we all know. And just as the Talibanis were behind, okay, I'll wrap up myself up fast. Just as, the only problem with the West is till they're attacked, they don't think the problem is their problem. So leaving it at that and going on then to Mr. Sai. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chaudhary, thank you so much. You really brought us up to speed with what's happening. Just because you mentioned Arakan, and I cannot help myself from talking about Arakan, the latest UNDP report says that there is going to be a famine-like condition between March and April 2025, which means there's going to be over 2 million displacements or migration from the Arakan. I think the Arakan army has a big problem on their hands soon enough. But without much ado, may I now please ask Ambassador Veena Sikri. She does not require an introduction. I'm sure all of us know her.
Thank you. Good evening, dear friends. Let me thank India Foundation and India Habitat Center under Bhashpati's leadership for arranging this very timely and important discussion. I'm happy to be invited as a panelist. Thank you for including me in this program. And congratulations to Pinak on your book. I've already participated in one book discussion with you at the ORF, and I'm very happy to do so again. But I must congratulate Pinak on the excellent book he has written, which has given us a lot of ideas and background into what is happening in Bangladesh today. And actually, if you just see the title of his book, he has 3 aspects of the title. It's a very detailed and comprehensive title. And number one, he talks about transformation. You know, so this is the transformation of Bangladesh. And certainly, this is very important because I think you have to understand what was Bangladesh in 1971. It was a complete basket case, to use a quotation of Henry Kissinger. And it was, you know, because it had been deprived by Pakistan all along. You know, all the raw materials were taken from East Pakistan, exported, and the money came to West Pakistan, never came to East Pakistan, and so on. And so this transformation is important, the way that Pinak has highlighted in his book, because he has brought out that this transformation, India's role in the transformation, which is very important, and India's role in the transformation with all governments. So this whole theory that putting your eggs in one basket, Sheikh Hasina is the only one, we loved only Sheikh Hasina, India doesn't love anybody else, this is completely to be debunked. We have dealt with every government that has come to power in Bangladesh, and if the response has been good, you move ahead. If the response has not been good, well, then you stay where you are and, you know, maybe look at other issues. So I think the fact that when Sheikh Hasina came to power, as a result of free and fair and inclusive elections in 2008 December, organized by the army, she got a huge majority. Nobody can say that that majority was a rigged election. And she got close to a 3/4 majority. She was Prime Minister from 2009 onwards till 2024. And with India, the relationship became very unique because she recognized India's security issues in the region. And I know, because I was High Commissioner between 2003 and 2006, when Begum Khalda Zia was the Prime Minister, and Jamaat-e-Islami, the same Jamaat-e-Islami that you have today, the same Jamaat-e-Islami was an alliance partner. They were in the government. And so I saw at first hand the havoc that they created for India, for India's neighbors, what was happening in the Northeast, how every insurgent group of the Northeast was given shelter in Bangladesh, how they had camps in Bangladesh, how when we came to know about the camps, what was told to us about the camps, Paresh Barma, Anup Chetia, you name it, they were all there, they had bank accounts, they had businesses, they had families there, they had owned houses, property, etc. So this was all being done. So what do you think? We should love the Jamaat-e-Islami? We should love the BNP. Of course, we should talk to them, and we do talk to them. And I was talking to them. I knew all of them, including the Amir of the Jamaat-e-Islami, the Prime Minister herself, Begum Khalda Zia, everybody. Of course, they were very, very well known to us. But their policies were something else, and it was quite amazing. Or sometimes I'd go to the minister's office in the morning and have a huge argument on policy, and in the evening the same minister would invite me to his residence for a huge party, group of people, and we'd have very interesting discussions and well-being. This is relationship. But you have to recognize the leaders who give you what you need on security. And for 15 years, between 2009 and 2024, the Northeast had been a place of peace and stability. We've even forgotten what it was like when the insurgent groups were there and when they were, jumping in and out of Bangladesh and what they were doing and the havoc they were creating. We've forgotten all about it because in the last 15 years, it was quiet and simple and straightforward. And we could develop the economy. Peace and development came to the Northeast. They've grown. Bangladesh has grown. It is because, I can say it clearly, it is because of the cooperation between India and Bangladesh that they have come out in the last 15 years to have a growth of 6 to 8% and graduated out of being an LDC into a lower middle income country. And many other countries, I'm not saying India is the only one who's helped Bangladesh, but many other countries, take Japan for example, they do their cooperation, they prefer to do their cooperation with Bangladesh in tandem with India. So you have Japan, India, Bangladesh cooperation, we work out joint projects, we see how it goes, because they know that directly it may be a little more problematic and they prefer to have the trilateral cooperation. And we've worked that out with many countries. So this is the mutually beneficial relationship that there is between India and Bangladesh. And I think one should not forget this. Stop getting into politics. What we have to remember is only one thing, that in 1971, There was Pakistan, there was USA, there was West Pakistan, there was USA, and there was the Jamaat-e-Islami. And in 2024, in July and August of this year, there was Pakistan, there was USA, and there was the Jamaat-e-Islami. The same combination. 53 years they waited. Lots of times they tried. Even when Sheikh Hasina came to power in 2009, there were army revolts against her, there was the BDR revolt against her. A lot of times tried to destabilize her. Even the Rohingyas, that's another thing I'm writing about. But it didn't work. The Jamaat-e-Islami and Pakistan kept at it and at it and at it. And with the help of the USA, they have now got through this breakthrough. So what is happening? I think that one should see what Pinak has written in his book, The Transformation, and then his second title is Emergence of Bangladesh, and how they have emerged, again, the cooperation with India, and the third title, the evolution of India-Bangladesh ties. So I think this puts us completely on the track that India is interested only in a stable, prosperous, and democratic Bangladesh. And we would like to support the forces that are working towards stability, prosperity, and democracy in Bangladesh. And I'd like to say that clearly this present group that is there in power in Bangladesh from the 8th of August onwards has not been able to bring either stability or prosperity or democracy to Bangladesh. Rather, they have done a huge backsliding on each of these aspects. And I would say that even the last conversation which Jake Sullivan had, the American NSA, with Mohammed Yunus 5 or 6 days ago, this is exactly what he said to Mohammed Yunus. We wanted you to bring stability, prosperity, and democracy to Bangladesh, clearly indicating that none of these have come. So I think the fact that, that this present interim, I won't even call it a government, interim regime, because they aren't a government. They have been sworn in under a constitution of Bangladesh. They have taken allegiance to the constitution of Bangladesh. But this constitution has no provision for an interim government. So on what basis are they there? They're not constitutionally valid. They're not, their legitimacy is under a big cloud. So this regime has tried only to bring in what the Jamaat-e-Islami wants. So Jamaat-e-Islami is the power behind the throne. Professor Mohammed Yunus is unable or unwilling to do much in Bangladesh. In fact, in Bangladesh, his own standing has been very weak because even in 2007 and 2008, when the army-backed caretaker government came in, they again wanted to bring Mohammed Yunus, and he tried to form a political party. And for a person who has huge grassroots connectivity in Bangladesh through Grameen Bank, one would have thought that the people of Bangladesh would rise as one in his support, but they didn't. And his attempts to have a political party collapsed. He said, I'm not going to enter politics again, but now he's at it again, and with similar results. So I think that, we have to recognize that what this regime is doing is not at all helpful for peace, prosperity, and democracy in the region. For them to be anti-Indian is part of the JEI mentality. In fact, in Pinak's book, in chapter 6 on religion and politics, he has explained this very clearly, how the JEI has always brought religion into politics and has always tried to Islamize and radicalize the Bangladesh people. So it is very interesting when Joyento says that Americans have thought JEI to be a democratic moderate Islamic party. They believe that for the last 40 years, no doubt. So much so that now they've even cut off their links with the BNP, and the BNP is separate from where they are. So I think the radicalization aspect, their views on religion and how they want to bring it into Bangladesh with the Sharia law is in fact very, very significant to see in that chapter, because that's what's playing out in Bangladesh today. And we have to realize that I don't think they're going to succeed, just as they have failed in the previous time, because while the people of Bangladesh are very religious, as are all people in South Asia, but they don't want a radicalized government. They don't want religion in politics. They want a good life. They want prosperity and development, which they had got before. So we have now a very strange situation where Pakistan is trying to reassert, in fact, the old relationship with Bangladesh. Sheikh Mujib wrote in his memoirs that when he met Bhutto in 1972, just before he was allowed to travel to London and then come to Delhi and then go to Dhaka, Bhutto tried to pretend that the previous 9 months had not existed and that nothing had happened. And he told Sheikh Mujib that let's forget about the past and let's have a federation, let's have a confederation, you know. So now, amazingly, the same thought is coming to the Pakistani leaders, and you do have a situation where a very significant defense analyst in Pakistan has said we have already a system where we have two nations but one country. So it is effect proves the fact that realization of what Pakistan wanted in Bangladesh, they're hoping to get it now. I think before concluding, I'll just say one more thing, that very soon the world will realize that since the era of globalization has ended, so in previous times when there was the era of globalization and transport costs were not so much, it didn't matter, you know, you could get your sugar from Brazil, you could get textile machinery from Italy and so on and so forth. But now this era of globalization ended, regional interdependence is your only hope for economic growth. And for Bangladesh, if they want to continue on the path of growth and prosperity, regional interdependence has to reassert itself for a very positive, mutually beneficial and constructive relationship. And I very much hope that the only answer in Bangladesh is to have free, fair and inclusive elections, not to leave out anybody, but to have free, fair and inclusive elections, and not to gerrymander by trying to have new parties and new political relationships in Bangladesh. I'm sure that will happen very soon, and I wish all the very best to Bangladesh and
Thank
to Pinak
you.
for the success of the book.
Thank you, Ambassador Sikri. I have so many questions in my head, especially because you mentioned the Rohingyas, but I'm going to wait till later. But now we are on our last panelist, Lieutenant General Saeed Atta Hasnain. He, of course, has a celebrated distinguished military career and has also served as the Chancellor of the Central University of Kashmir. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rami. Let me lighten the mood. Jai Hind. Lots of military people I see here. So let me start with the tutorial discussion. General Kulkarni, would you tell me what does the Indian Army call the Pakistan Army when we conduct our exercises? Narc. Absolutely. We call them the forces of Narc. And General Dhab, what would the Chinese be called? Sorry? Chandal, absolutely. The Indian Army calls the Chinese Chandal. Whenever we conduct our exercises or our sand models, etc., it starts with Chandals. And then, do you know what the Bangladesh Army calls the Indian Army? Foxland. Chalaki. Foxland. You are known as the foxes. Cannot trust an Indian. That's what it starts from. So thank you. First of all, let me congratulate Ambassador Chakravarty for this. I think this is a very timely book which has come out. Added oodles to my knowledge, and as I dare say, the best thing is that over the next 1 month, there are at least 5 discussions that I am involved with on Bangladesh, including Ambassador Bharati's discussion here. So I'm looking forward to reading it in depth completely, although I've just at the moment had a peripheral look at it. But it covers everything. The problem with most of us in India, not this community, but people across in the street or anywhere else, for them, the history of Bangladesh stopped at 1971. It was created, and it became a peaceful country, peaceful, friendly with India, transformed, complete relationship transformed, everything. And suddenly in 2024, everything has gone berserk. They wondered what happened in these 53 years. That is what you have actually filled up marvelously. Marvelously filled up, and I particularly would focus on your chapter 11, which gives out in a nutshell the differences in the bilateral agenda since independence. You know, looking at things like assistance to Indian insurgent groups, we are all aware of the Northeast, the sharing of river waters, we are all aware of the Farakka issue, border management itself, smuggling, human trafficking, visas, the delays in visas which the Bangladeshis complain about, Rohingya refugees, a million of them who have been displaced from the other side, from Myanmar, and also your book, your chapter on the economy which you just mentioned is another very outstanding chapter. But one other chapter which I really enjoyed was the full description of your tenure, in which the mutiny in the Bangladesh, in the BDR, the Bangladesh Rifles, took place. I mean, it was unthinkable. 42 officers were killed. Their bodies were found there, buried in that headquarters there. That should give you an idea of what is the quality, what is the nature of the armed elements in Bangladesh. Because that's not something which has been spoken about so far. So let me, in the next 5-7 minutes, try and tell you who are you dealing with in terms of the Bangladesh Army, Bangladesh Rifles, the intelligence agencies, etc. How am I qualified to talk on that? Well, I spent some fair amount of time with the Bangladesh Army in the United Nations. I had a force commander from Bangladesh. I had Colonel Muin, later on General Muin, whom you keep referring to, sir, as he was with me as the chief military observer in Rwanda. I've been to Bangladesh a couple of times. Surprisingly, after giving Bangladesh or providing Bangladesh its independence in 1971, I happened to be the first Indian Army general to have spoken at the Bangladesh NDC. Now you just wonder, I'm just wondering whether it strikes you. Transformational relationship we talk about. And we speak in Australia, in the United States, in IISS in London, we speak everywhere around the world, in the Manama dialogue, everywhere. Never spoke in Dhaka. We never considered it fit enough, perhaps, or it was too low down to go and speak there. That has been the problem with our relationship. Sometimes we have taken some things for granted. And there were an awkward set of people with whom we have been dealing. It's not necessary, of course, to pander to them, but it is necessary to understand their sentiments to a great extent. Anyone who served with the Bangladesh Army in the United Nations will tell you, the first advice anyone will tell you, don't talk about 71. Right? But they got a chip on the shoulder. Humne lada tha 71. Right? Mukti, if you tell them Mukti Jodhas and we fought together and we won, no. Bangladesh Army had fought 71. Okay, granted, yeah, you chaps are very good, very professional, etc. But they take it to heart. Very, very greatly take it to heart. Secondly, what is their nature in terms of beliefs and understanding? I lived in a India-Bangladesh house in Rwanda for the better part of over a year. None of the Bangladeshis spoke English very comfortably. They didn't know how to operate a radio. Most of them didn't know how to drive, and they couldn't write a situation report which an observer is supposed to write. So 4 things which a military observer is required to do, they couldn't do. So they were surviving only at my mercy. So I did the best thing. I asked them, you manage my house and I will do everything else. Right? So, I mean, I'm not trying to do down the thing, but I'm just saying the quality of professionalism there was way down. But I got hugely impressed by the Bangladesh Army when I went and visited Dhaka. For example, the counteraction against the ISIS action which took place in Dhaka, if you remember, in the famous bakery, was done by the Bangladesh Special Forces, and it was done wonderfully. Very, very professionally done. So there are standards which are, huge variants as such. You can't really peg it down to saying that they are unprofessional or something like that. They can be very, very good sometimes at military activities. 2 issues more which I just want to dwell upon. I visited Bangladesh a couple of years ago at the invitation of the Bangladesh Army, and the DA there, Defense Attaché there, General Nanda, who will be there tomorrow morning to speak at St. Joe's with us. I spoke at the Bangladesh Institute of Strategic Studies. and I was told that there'll be 40 people to address. I was shocked when I saw 300. And Jaggi Nanda came from behind and told me, sir, that person sitting on the right there is the military secretary to the Prime Minister. He's come to listen to what you are saying. Because they want to know what is an Indian general in Bangladesh, what is he talking? So I was very careful with what I was talking. I didn't want to get arrested there and stay put inside Dhaka as such. So I pandered to a lot of things of this. But I won't tell you the long and short. I had a LO with me, a liaison officer, and I had a driver. The driver was itching to speak to me those 5-6 days. He never got a chance because always the LO was there. At one stage, the officer left and went somewhere, and the driver came to me. He knew I'm a Muslim. And he said, Sheikh Hasina, no, only support Hindu, nothing else. Why I'm telling you, this is a Bangladesh army, within the army. Only support Hindus. We, that is Khalida Zia, basically BNP, Jamaat-e-Islami, etc., we are true Muslims. So that is actually the inner feelings within the army. Now, no one talks about this aspect of the ideology within the army itself, hugely divided. There are hard drinkers. In the UN, the best drinkers are always from Bangladesh army, right? But hardcore ideologists are also from there at the same time. My last point. How does this all affect us, sir? This is an issue which we will have to look at what has happened in Bangladesh at the moment. It's not a 1-division army, it's not a 2-division army, it's a 10-division army. You know the meaning of 10 divisions? We have got 44, 45 divisions in the Indian army, it's got 10 divisions. Ideally, militarily to speak, to defeat 10 divisions, you require 30 divisions. Which means 3/4 of your army will get committed to Bangladesh if ever thing like that happens. It won't happen, of course. But there are threats which are there, and you are seeing Hataf 3 missiles are already on their way to Bangladesh from Pakistan. And I always say, when people ask me, when did Pakistan leave Bangladesh? Did they leave them in 71? I said, Pakistan has never left Bangladesh. It has never left. 93,000 prisoners were taken away. But Pakistan did not leave Bangladesh. They are finding that opportunity. This is the only time in the history of the Pakistan army they actually are thriving on a long-term strategy. And that strategy started after their defeat in 71 and perhaps after the Shimla Agreement of 72. One can keep on speaking on this for hours, but thank you, sir, for your book, because this is what has given us all this ammunition to speak about. And I think it's done marvelously, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, General Hasnain. That was really military precision, not a minute over. This has been an absolutely insightful discussion. I think it's covered history, it's covered current affairs, media, diplomatic relations, and I'm sure we have a lot of questions because I know I do, but I'm going to take that opportunity over coffee. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the floor up for a couple of questions together, and then we'll do a second round of a couple of questions again, but we have limited time. So may I request that we don't go into commentary and history and make our questions specific, and please let me know who is directed towards. So yes, ma'am, please, we'll start with you.
Thank you very much, and congrats, Pinak. I have one comment and one question, which is that the panelists and the authors spoke about, particularly the last panelist, said that Pakistan never actually left Bangladesh, which is a very interesting comment. I wanted to say that in my own book on Bengal and its partition, I have explained that the language movement which resulted in 71 started because of the racist and supercilious approach of the West Pakistan and the West Pakistani army towards what they called the dark-skinned, fish-eating Bengalis, Muslims, who recite the Quran in Bengali and not in Arabic, and basically are second-class citizens of Allah. That is their approach. That has not gone anywhere. That is not going anywhere. The Quranic verses will continue to be recited in Bengali and not in Arabic. And no matter how much they hide it, they are much more comfortable eating fish than eating beef. So I wanted to ask, in particular, General Hasnain, that no matter whatever they say and they cover up, the point is that they became independent because they put Bengali language, culture, and civilization before religion. So the real threat to India is their desire to annex West Bengal and make it a Bengal state, not of confederation with Pakistan. They have always dreamt of that. And they also feel that Bengali Hindus, even those who have crossed over, and this is different from what happened in Punjab. Bengali Hindus, including people like myself, we don't know Bengali, we don't know Bengali culture, we're not true Bengalis because we are Indians, not Bengalis. I would like the panelists to please comment on this aspect, because this is well known to people who come from that part of Bengal, including myself and Pinak, that they have total contempt for Bengalis who are in India. They don't consider themselves them as Bengalis. They need to be civilized, they need to be conquered, they need to be made into proper Bengalis the way they are in Bangladesh. That's the reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, to the author, the ambassador, and the other three panelists, outstanding. Now, from what Ambassador Mukherjee said, I've got a slightly contrarian point of view, which I would like your comments again. You see, in 1971, when this war took place, very correctly said, it was a fight for Bengali nationalism. But when it was a fight for Bengali nationalism, the threat was not from within East Pakistan. The threat was from West Pakistan. So, that is the one reason why the entire East Pakistan actually united together, because they looked at the West Pakistanis as the oppressors. Today, the situation has changed. When we are looking at the Islamization which has taken place in Bangladesh, it is from within those people. So I have a contrary view to Ambassador Mukherjee. This question especially to Jayanta. My question is, it's over. The battle is over. The Islamists have won. The nationalists have lost. The BNP and the Awami League are not going to get back. They don't have it in them. The power of the Islamists using Islam as a tool will override all other factors, and Bangladesh will become a carbon copy of, say, Afghanistan, but worse. May I have your views on that? This especially for Jayanta.
So I'll take one more question. General Shukla, and then there's a gentleman after you who's raised his hand.
So my question is to General Hasnain, sir. Each time I come for this discussion on Bangladesh, it gets me thinking that this hostility, jingoism is all right. Is it going to convert into a military adversariality? See, if I'm in Beijing now, Pak-Sino collusivity here, this is a ripe place, for the Chinese to create an adversariality for us. Coupled with what's happening in Myanmar, the news from Bhutan is not good. RBA has been cold shouldering the Indian Army for some time now. So all in all, is a new national security reality being created? Because as you pointed out, that will really impinge on our capacities. And if there is such a worry, then something should be done about it in terms of budgetary resources and so on. So that's my pointed question to you, sir.
First of all, congratulations to the author. And lastly, and everybody, precision on the information, and especially to General Hasnain, who we have briefly met before. Single question, what bothers us is, does India have the spine to step up, to intervene in what we haven't called the genocide, right from the 46 till date? And I had met Ambassador Sikri during your time in Bangladesh as well, which I have personally witnessed there. Not just slashing off the veins, Chaudhry, it's also cutting people into pieces. As rightly pointed out earlier, the entire CST was a Buddhist, the 18 of them, as you rightly pointed out, which stands out. What does it take for India to step up and take charge and bring about a solution, as rightly pointed out by Ambassador Sikri, is the globalization has ended, but the regional cooperation interdependence has actually more become accentuated. What will it take? Thank you.
I think we'll take these 4 questions before we go to the second round, so please.
Several, thoughts in my head, and some of it's mentioned here in terms of. Let me first address the issue of did Pakistan ever leave Bangladesh? I agree with you. They never left, because the people who didn't want Bangladesh to be created are still very much there. This is, at least I would say, my estimate has been about 30% of the people of Bangladesh never wanted independence. They didn't want to become free, despite all the thing you say about language and things like that. How many of you know that the Muslim League was founded in Dhaka in 1906? We all look westwards, Pakistan. It was not these Urdu-speaking UP Muslims who founded it. It was the Bengali-speaking Muslims who founded the Muslim League. And you all know the history, I don't have to get into it. So the Muslim League mentality is very much there. Some Bangladeshis have even told me that if there was no partition, there would be no Bangladesh. I mentioned it here. So you must understand that mindset and the mentality from where they come from. It is different that Sheikh Mujib himself changed from the days he spent in Kolkata actively pursuing the Pakistan. In fact, in his unfinished memoirs, he has also said what this advisor said, that the northeast of India should have been part of East Pakistan. And he also mentions in his memoirs that Kolkata should have been given to East Pakistan. Because he lived in Kolkata, so he felt that was... and it was a Hindu majority Kolkata that he was talking about. Hopefully it still is, I don't know. But so this is where we make a mistake in underestimating or not trying to understand the mindset of some people, not all, I would say. There is a very vocal, secular section there, but dwindling in my view. And there's a very thin slice left now. I don't know whether I should say this. No, I think I will not. A very senior Awami League leader once told me, might as well say it now, it doesn't matter, that High Commissioner, and he used to love his drink, by the way, and we used to spend a lot of time together hitting the bottle, because after that he really spoke, and I would listen. He told me that, Dada, don't make this mistake. I said, what mistake have I made? Kata, there is anything called a secular Muslim in Bangladesh. I was struck by why he said it. He himself was very secular, so I was wondering, why is he saying this? But obviously he knew his people better than I did, I think. So that is one aspect of Bangladesh that we must remember. And the Jamaat-e-Islami, which was a collaborator in the genocide with the Pakistan army, fully backed by the Americans, and that is why they have a long-term relationship since then, is back in power, more so to speak. Because it was their stormtroopers, the Shibir and others, who really took the agitation over and made it into a regime change operation. And the point about military conflict, I will leave it to you. And new national security environment. Yes and no. One can always say that, yes and no. There are trends that can indicate a new national security environment. But then I also look back and see that things change. What will happen in Bangladesh when a new government comes, an elected government comes? We really don't know whether they will. The BNP, for example, is sending out feelers every day to India saying that do not think that we will act like what we did when we were in power. I have personally met many of them. They said, Dada, forget the past. We are not this. Even the Jamaatis are saying this. We're telling India that, you misjudge us. We are not the Jamaati of the 1971. We are, we want to do business. We want good relations. Even General Waqar, who shouldn't have given an interview, but he has said that we want completely friendly relations with India. You see, the geopolitical and geoeconomic conditions, which I think every intelligent person in Dhaka realizes, does not give much ballast to their anti and hostile India attitude. They cannot survive with that attitude. Look at the geography. They're surrounded by India. Look at the economic aspect of it. We realize that, and that is why we will not stop economic cooperation, whatever the government in Dhaka. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll restrict myself to two issues. Firstly, the first issue raised by Ambassador Basmati, and a corollary to that which was raised by General Katoch. I'm divided in my mind. I support both of you, actually. But the point is, I tend to go along with you, sir, a little more, because my study of political Islam tells me that is the path which is being followed more and more in the Islamic world. And when you look at the Islamic world, extending across into Southeast Asia, into East Asia and places like that, I think that seems to be the trend. Overcoming the cultural part of it. The cultural side is very strong in Bangladesh, there's no doubt about it. But I think it has been overridden to an extent by political Islam today. That's my opinion. The second part, Jan Shukla's question, which is very good, absolutely. I don't think it is that extreme, but a threat in being will continue to linger there. And I'm glad you asked this question because I didn't have the time to talk about it earlier. I will outline 3, 4, 5 areas. We are not living in a world of conventional war, although you're fighting one in Ukraine and you're fighting something near in Gaza. But I think in our domain, we are looking more and more at hybrid. This is a classic case of hybrid threats, which will pose as conventional threats, and you will be forced, your force ratios are going to go haywire completely. For example, missilery. Now, so far you had 400 kilometers from the Western Front coming towards you. Now you have 400 kilometers coming from the Eastern Front too. The threat, if nothing else. The second thing is the Siliguri corridor. As long as our friendship with Bangladesh was there, the transformational relationship was there, the Siliguri corridor was wide open. I mean, we could go through the Siliguri corridor and consider it to be secure. No longer. Now we will not be able to do it. So we will have to take a lot of precautions for Siliguri corridor for the future. Reserves. We were at the drop of a hat, we could pull out our reserves from the northeast and move them towards the west, etc. We can't do that so comfortably today. Northeast insurgencies, that issue which has been touched a lot in this book, is something which already people are looking at reactivation. The 34 groups with whom you have got Caesar of operations in Manipur and places like that, everyone must be salivating at the moment with this kind of a situation which is emerging, Pakistani support there, etc. Why won't Pakistan look at this? They say, we have been able to pull that much of the army towards the northern borders, of the Indian army towards the northern borders, and not that much more of the Indian army towards the eastern borders against Bangladesh. What is left to handle against the western border? So that is a source of worry. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, just to add a few words. I think 2 points. First of all, what Bhashpati said, that Pakistan has always had this colonial approach towards Bangladesh, East Pakistan, and they wanted to control it through that colonial approach. I think they really imbibed the colonial lessons far too well from the British, and they decided to do that. And of course, at that point, when the Bangladeshis decided to revolt, the religion factor in Bangladesh was not so strong. But over the years, Pakistan has not left Bangladesh because of the JEI. The JEI has been their proxy all throughout, and the JEI has focused more and more on religion. And through generous support from Pakistan financially and from Saudi Arabia and many other countries of West Asia, the money coming into Bangladesh has been used by the JEI to strengthen that focus of religion. So religion has now become an economic support for the people of Bangladesh, and that is why the JEI, the Jamaat-e-Islami, is not too bothered if the economy goes for a 6, because then they bring in their financial support and they replace that. So I think that is one aspect, but we have to understand that I think the Bengali psyche is one that I don't think will tolerate any more of this dominance. So let's see when that point comes. But I think the second part is, and this we haven't discussed today because this is not a subject of discussion, is that yes, all this problem of the Siliguri corridor and stretching out our army, but this all depends on India's own reaction. And we haven't quite discussed our own ways and our own methodologies and our own responses. I think it's a time when we are waiting and watching and seeing what will happen. And there has been a political change after the American elections, and we have to see how the situation evolves. So I think this is a time during which I'm sure that we have to reorient our own efforts, strategies, military strategies and military approach to this situation, combined with a strong people-to-people, which we should build upon, and which actually was weakened in the last few years because there was considerably less focus on this, even though the programs were there, like the judicial program, all this was there. But the earlier very free interaction was I think has to be rebuilt, and we should do that now.
I'll try and answer your question, sir. There has always been this contest or battle between the Islamic soul of Bangladesh and the Bengali soul of Bangladesh. That started out, it's been there historically, but let's start from the 1930s when, as Pinak pointed out, the Muslim League was actually founded in Dhaka. Midan Nawab of Dhaka, he was the chief patron of the Muslim League. And though most of the Ashrafs of East Pakistan actually used to speak either Persian or Urdu at home, and not Bengali, they knew Bengali. And most of the converts, and they were the larger numbers, used to speak Bengali. There was also a difference in their dressing style in 1930s at least. There would be Muslim boys in college who would be wearing dhotis and kurtas, and there would be Muslim boys who would wear the Aligarhi pajamas and kurtas. So if he was wearing an Aligarhi pajama, you knew he was from an Ashraf family, Nawab of Bogra or one of their, many zamindars. Whereas those who were wearing dhotis were the more middle class kind of a people. And there was a very narrow middle class amongst the Muslims in East Pakistan at that point of time. The middle class was mostly Hindu. Muslim League started propagating things like, you wear sari, but you should not wear a red bordered sari, that is a Hindu culture. So you wear a green bordered sari. So the differentiation between the women or between Hindus and Muslims started in a bigger way in 1930s. But by 1947, you had the Bengali culture also coming up. There were many who spoke out against the formation of East Pakistan at that point of time. They were subdued. You were stopped in their tracks, but they were there. There were writings in many papers there in Bengali language press, which was catering mostly to East Pakistan, which spoke about what would happen if Urdu is imposed, etc. Even before Jinnah made his famous statement about Urdu and only Urdu will be the national language of Pakistan in the Dhaka University campus. Syed Mustafa Ali, famous Bengali writer, he in a poets convention said that Tagore is the biggest literary figure in Bengali or in the Indian subcontinent. And there were people who were willing to beat him up because they thought it was not so. Iqbal is the biggest figure, according to them, and he had to run away to India. The rest is history. We know he became a big literary figure here. He served in the All India Radio, went to Kabul too as a radio man. But that contest continued. Language movement, 52, 50s, we know it was against the Bengali language coming up. We used to export films, books, magazines, periodicals. That was one of the first things that was stopped, even during Mujib's time, because they thought they are being influenced by us. They are becoming culturally influenced by us. They are becoming a colony of India or West Bengal or Calcutta, whatever you want to call it. We should continue with that. Now it's easy. You ban a book, it doesn't matter. You can always sell a book via satellite, sell a magazine, sell a movie, and which is what we are doing. Bangladeshis watch mostly Indian television, mostly televisions which are catered out of India from whether they are Calcutta-based Bengali language programs or whether they are Hindi programs. So we should continue doing that, and that will influence them. That does influence them. The fight between the Islamic soul of Bangladesh and the Bengali soul of Bangladesh will continue. Yes, at some points of time, the Islamic soul will win. At some points of time, the Bengali soul will win. Now, how we are able to play out this game, how they play out this game is something else. In fact, Jamaati Islami's Amir, at that point of time, when I went, I think Binagda was still High Commissioner there. That was one of my first visits.
He was minister.
He was a minister at that time, and I spoke to him, and he told me, he complained to me, they are trying to make us Bengalis. We are Bengali Muslims. That is the difference between us and Awami League. So that is going to remain the difference. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I think this has been a really, really, wonderful discussion. We've all learned a lot more than what we knew when we came in. But unfortunately, and I do think that's a testimony to how important this topic in your book is, sir, that we have so many questions. I can't take that because it's already 7:30 and we have tea and coffee and snacks outside. But I would request you all to engage with the authors and our panelists over a cup of coffee. And buy the book, which if you already haven't. Sir, I'm totally out of time, but sir, because it's you, I cannot say no.
Thank you. No, just 2 points. One, I recollect reading somewhere that in 74 when Rajiv met the Pakistanis for the first time, he cried. He said, I didn't want this. I'm sure Pinak would have read about this. But the question I have is this, and Veena ji mentioned that there is a nexus now, as it was in 71, Pakistan, US, and the Jamaatis. Now, I'm a little confused, because in 71, the dialectic between us and the US was of a totally different nature. Today, we have a global and strategic comprehensive partnership with the US. So, is it our diplomatic failure in not being able to convince the US on what is the true situation in Bangladesh?
You will never come. I'll just quickly respond to Ambassador Kajju here, saying that it's not about convincing the US. US will never be convinced if its national interest demands, whether you are a strategic partner or anything. And I think, how much has the US conceded to you in Pakistan, for example? I leave it there.
Thank you very much.
Can add a word to that
Before-
Vivek? I think Vivek, I can add a word to that. I think that one has to also see the conditions within USA, the deep state, the actions of the deep state, how logical it was within the present circumstances. Who were they acting against, and who were the forces which made them take this decision? I think that also the layering within the USA is very important to understand. as well.
Before we end the session, may I please ask Ambassador Mukherjee to please come on stage for a photograph with our panelists.